Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran, and I want to welcome you to the podcast. We've got a great show for you today. Of course, I want to say hello to my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Doing fantastic, Todd. We're back. Another big platform launches, kind of. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting. It's great to be back doing the show.
It is. And we were out last week because you were on travel. So maybe would we want to cover that animal first? And you want to talk about what happened while you were at your event?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about what happened. What we're talking about is the Vancouver Podcast Festival up in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's at the left coast of Canada. So it was the first year event up there that they put on a festival. It's the new model now of having a podcast kind of conference and educational kind of track combined with a bunch of live podcasts and now when I say live podcasts, I'm saying on stage presentations of the podcast. And in this case, it's kind of like some of them were like get the host of the true crime podcast on the stage to talk about the production, not necessarily do the podcast on stage. So it was kind of a little bit different. It's just kind of like taking some of the venue out to like a movie theater type of venue and having the hosts of these true crime type podcasts talk about their productions. I mean, really, the event up there was very focused on the hot genre of true crime type storytelling, and kind of like this hybrid between reality and fiction. So that was really the emphasis up there. And if you think about podcasting in Canada, which is it's always been this way, it's a market very similar to what is going on in Europe, where kind of like state-run media. Now, I don't know if it's state-run, but state-funded media, like the CBC, will actually dominate the media landscape up there, and that's who was heavily involved in the conference up there, the CBC, and they put on a lot of sessions. A lot of the content creators from the CBC put on educational sessions for new aspiring podcasters up there, and then got up on stage and stuff. But some folks from the U.S. were up there and up on stage talking about their true crime productions and their storytelling podcasts. But the big thing that I took away from it is that it wasn't a huge event, but it was certainly a good kind of beginning for that conference up there and live festival. So they're definitely doing it next year, and it's something that will, I believe, continue to grow. I think they need to get probably a little better venue type of situation. They were kind of scattered all over the place in the public library up there, and then in a building that's adjacent to the CBC facility up there. But they really had some really high level kind of sessions on what they called master classes up there, teaching how to produce storytelling podcasts at a very advanced level, like the CBC level. It's really audio journalism is what it is at its core. But in some ways, the sessions were like way over people's heads, right? It was very, very, very sophisticated productions with very complex kind of recording equipment and scenarios and stories, and so there's like writers, and then there's producers, and the editing was very complex. Using software like Reaper to produce these multi-track recordings. So like these audio producers would go out in the field and they would record all this different audio, and then they bring it back. It's kind of, Todd, like what we've talked about for the last couple of years, is that some of these storytelling podcasts can be pretty heavy productions.
No, they have to be.
Yeah, right. And so that was something that was interesting for me to see. I hadn't seen very many sessions at any other conferences in the U.S. At that advanced level of trying to train beginner audiences on how to do these really advanced productions. And I walked away thinking, because I heard from a lot of people in the audience when I talked to them after the sessions, is that it would be sure nice to have a beginner level session, right?
Right.
Not just, go up to the professional level right out of the gate. Because most people in the audience were just sitting there like going, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, they get scared when they see that, right?
Right. But I do think that it is possible to do something at a little lower scale that sounds great and accomplishes the goal that doesn't require, a lot of expense and a lot of like a really big team. And I think that's the type of session that needs to be taught at some events. If we're going to pursue this, and I do believe that the fictional storytelling stuff and the reality storytelling, which honestly, reality storytelling is like every podcast.
Right.
Really, the only difference between any reality storytelling podcast is the length. Like, you could say this is a storytelling podcast too if you wanted to, Todd, because I'm telling a story right now, right?
Right.
It just doesn't have a lot of complex edits and production, that kind of stuff.
Matter of fact, there is no edits or no production on this show.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We are live. Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that, because Angela called me yesterday, and he and a couple of my team members have been interviewing people for a position at the company, and he says, I can't believe how many people have been involved in a storytelling podcast.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of buzz around it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people wanting to do it. It's like people are starting to think that's what podcasting is now. That's the thing. Yeah.
And I'm like, we're not hiring a storytelling podcaster. But if they've had this experience, great.
Right.
But I thought there was a little bit of an interesting twist there. One thing that you had your event, and then back a couple of weeks ago, there was the Sound Education event in Boston.
Right, at Harvard.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about.
I was invited. Yeah, I was invited to go to that. I turned it down though.
Yeah, so Mackenzie from our team went. She was on a panel, but Thursday of the event they had a workshop at the PRX Garage in Boston, and that was hosted by Eric Newsom, and he basically went over 3 things your podcast needs. Then Friday they had sessions all day around sound design and educational episodes and a workshop. She participated in a session called Making Podcasts Work Financially, which was the actual session was sponsored by Radiolab, which I thought kind of was kind of funny. And but on that panel was Andy Bowers, Kathy Doyle was there. One of our fans of this show was there. Marshall Williams from Ad Results down in Texas. So from that actual session, I formulated my next year's worth of, because I'm switching from I've done this same type of shtick, I guess, for 2 years at the podcast events, talking about growing your podcast. And so something that really stuck with Mackenzie from that Friday session was from the gentleman from Ad Results. And he basically, it's centered around, you have a big show, but he sees big shows every day that aren't delivering when it comes to advertising. He says you got a great show, and your audience is not engaged, and they are not. They didn't perform. Sorry, Charlie, we're not renewing. And so, I think I'll be focusing this year on helping podcasters learn how to engage and bring results. I think I get a little history in that, and having 14 years with the same sponsor. So.
Right, I would say so, yes.
And I think I can talk a little bit and I don't want to dwarf into my other stuff that I've talked about, but I definitely can talk about the relationships and this need. You got 50,000 listeners, but if you don't get any sales from that, and also this belief by podcasters that, I can just charge $600 for my 1,000 listeners, and I'm like, yeah, they might do that for a month. But if you're not delivering value back to the advertiser, and the value's in multiple layers too. So anyway, that's going to be my submission for Podfest. So probably someone's going to go out there and submit it as well. Now that I've talked about it, but and then the booth, they had tables, but it really wasn't set up. They were in multiple buildings, so people were coming and going. So from a vendor standpoint, it really wasn't that valuable. But it was a good educational. I think they had 300-400 people there, so not a bad event for a little regional event held in Boston. So at Harvard.
Yeah, it was a one-day event, as I recall, right?
It was
2 day?
It was Friday and Saturday, and then I think they even had stuff. Yeah, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Thursday was the workshop in the evening, a mixer. Friday was all day sessions, and Saturday was more about doing live. They were live events.
Oh, okay.
So they did live shows on Saturday.
Okay. It was a little bit like a festival type format.
Yeah, Dan Carlin was there. Zachary Davis. So those were the kind of the key, the shows of the star on Saturday. So I think it was a good event for the folks that went. So these little things are popping up all over. So good opportunities for folks to get a 2-dayer. And I liked how they had it on a Friday, Saturday. People don't have to burn too much PTO.
Right.
Yeah.
That's certainly true. But, there's certainly a lot of these podcast festivals popping up really all over the world. Because I think it was like 2 weeks ago, there was one in Paris, the Paris Podcast Festival. Yeah. And I know that there's ones popping up all over the U.S. right now. So it's certainly something that's bubbling in a significant way across the country. And they're doing like these combination of live on stage productions of podcasts as well as the educational side. So there's a lot of that going on right now, and it's actually exciting to see. I mean, if you think back just a few years ago, the LA Podfest was the one that really kind of kicked off this combination of doing live on stage kind of performances of the podcast in combination with an educational track. But when they started it was all, the focus was on the live on stage stuff. Yeah. And it was like they had like these little closet rooms for the educational track, but that's what really kicked this off. And it's just ironic and unfortunate that the LA Podfest is no longer operational when everybody else around the world is doing it now, right?
Yep. But let me share with the audience, we haven't talked about this at all, but Podfest it's in February, dude. February 8th to the 10th.
I know. PodCon and this one. And,
yeah.
So,
wasn't Podfest in March last year?
No, it's always been kind of like late February, so it's kind of in between.
Yeah, so that event's coming up, and it's down in Orlando.
I know. Yeah.
So I know that Mackenzie's been taking care of all the stuff for that for us, and I just looked at the date yesterday. I was like, whoa, and I'm looking at my schedule and making sure I'm deconflicting that already.
Right.
So February 8th through the 10th in Orlando is Podfest.
And then PodCon in Seattle is going to be the next one.
If you're a storyteller, you need to go to that.
Right.
The one in San Diego. Haven't heard, I guess we finally got in touch with the folks that are working that over there. Have we heard anything? Much?
Well, the woman that was in charge of putting the event together as far as sponsors and stuff, she was on maternity leave for a while. So now she's back and she's putting packages together now. So it's coming together now. I don't see them doing a lot of online promotion for the event, though. That's the thing. If you contrast it with what we see happening with like Podcast Movement or even Podfest, there's year-round promotion going on for that event. And if PodCon wants to become a significant, which they certainly are already, but if they want to even grow bigger, they're going to have to get on the ball game year-round, like all the other big events.
But again, it's huge on this storytelling piece. This
Right.
is, and it was last year was, we talked about a lot on the show. We were blown away. There was some
Yeah.
stuff that was done there that I was like,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, it was like close to 2,000 people at that event. Easy. And I mean, that community is just rabid. And that event could easily become the biggest event if they actually put some marketing juice behind it.
And they actually, put some time into putting sessions together that, would go beyond the storytelling stuff. Yeah, they could. But it, I think the story I like to tell the most about PodCon was when we arrived and setting the booth up. You always do the recon, right? You walk around, and there was this board that basically says post your podcast ad, and I'm looking at this kind of like, wrinkling my nose a little bit, and there's on the side there's crayons and pens and markers and stuff to tear out so you can cut out and make like a decoupage podcast ad. And I just kind of like, okay, like we're gonna sit around a table and be kids and do an art project, right? And
we are.
Well, I walked back by there the next day and it was plastered from one side to the other, and I'm just like, so definitely not a normal podcasting audience, because and I'm not saying that wouldn't have happened at a regular podcast conference, but it was like one of those New York, where everything was just, it was full. It wasn't like one or two, it was like hundreds.
Right.
It's like, really? And people sitting around the table all having fun, cutting out stuff, and I was so it was definitely a different creative type of group. Nothing against it, but for me, I was just shocked.
It's just different than what we normally see at a podcasting event. Yeah.
So totally different audience.
Yeah, and it speaks to the age demo that you're looking at there.
I'm not going.
You're not going.
No, I'm not going. It's not advisable for Mackenzie and probably one of our other team members will go. Not a Rob. I hope you're sending young people, and you will not be the lone old white guy in the room.
Yeah, I thought about maybe wearing a rabbit costume or something like that. I don't know, so they would know I'd be like a really tall rabbit.
Yeah, I'm not going because I'll be frank. They don't want to come up and talk to me. They want to come up and talk to someone young and younger. I'm just being frank. It's the crowd, So
that's true. That's true. But and Todd, we can always have that fatherly relationship.
Stop. I take care of my kids. I don't need to take care of anybody else's kids.
Right.
So, but actually, and it conflicts with CES too for me. So that's another main reason I'm not going. So I'm teasing a little bit here.
Well, it kind of conflicts, right?
Well, I'm going to be 10 days in Vegas. I'm going to come back and face plant, and I have to get caught up for, because I'm full and sued, and I'm essentially out of pocket that entire time. And
I'll bet Todd, I'm sure you can go to the iHeartRadio Podcast Awards. Well,
that is the event that shall not be spoken about.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Although it is kind of funny, I've had some calls. I had one yesterday. This is hilarious. The guy's like, a relatively big known company, and said, "Hey, we want to be a corporate sponsor for the podcast awards." I said, "Oh, fantastic." I said, and he says, "Well, tell me about your red carpet event." And I'm like, "Well, frankly, we haven't had one in about 5 years." And what? And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a team of one, and we barely have gotten any corporate sponsorship over the past 14 years." I said, "We've been running this thing on a shoestring." And I explained, what we'd done and talked about the history, and he's like, "Well, how much is it going to take to do a big event?" And so then I started explaining to him, okay, so if you don't have an event associated with another event, in other words, if it's not aligned with a Podfest or a PodCon, or I said, first of all, you're going to have a hard time getting the bodies there. Have someone fly to Vegas or do something like that, getting enough people to the event to actually, because I said we're honoring independent, well, really not independent, anyone can enter, but it usually ends up being independent podcasters. And I'm like, we're going to have to fly people out. Well, how many we're going to have to fly out? I said, well, probably 200. And, I heard a pause on the other side of the phone. And so I'm saying, yeah, we're talking a couple $100,000 to do this event. Probably $100,000 for a venue, $150,000 for, airfare or whatever. If you want to do this, right? And I said, it should be aligned with some other event where podcasters already are, and having this. And I said, see my dilemma here. And
right.
So this guy's motivated. He said, well, I've got some contacts at such and such network and such this and such that. Let me go back and let's get some money. I'm like, great, let's get some money. Money talks, bullshit walks. So,
you've got the serious podcast awards for the podcasting space. I mean, let's be frank about it.
It's not the only one, Rob.
I know it's not the only one, but it's the first one, and it's one that I think is cross the industry. It's not narrowly focused on one particular network.
No. It's not an award to pat the back of the good old boy network.
Right. It's actually for the whole industry. It's not, and that's what's great about your event, is that it doesn't have those biases out there that a lot of the other events are. Well, not a lot of the other ones, but some of them.
And I'll just be frank. The event has not had the support of other podcasting companies, because people associate the podcast awards with me, and they associate me with Blueberry, and I'm a competitor. So there's very little support from the actual podcasting industry. Whereas I tried to get out of it. I tried to sell the podcast awards to get out of it, and then that company went bankrupt, and left me hanging with bills and other people hanging with bills. And I got the awards back, and I tried to diverse myself of it, and now we've rebuilt it, and rebuilt the site with the support of the community, and a fundraising campaign and everything. So it is not a moneymaker. My God, I wish it was, considering the time I have to put into it. But the podcast awards is not tied. It's tied to me. It's my, AKA Raw Voice. Blueberry has nothing to do with it. I get no financial, no technical support. Matter of fact, I get a third party company that does all the technical stuff. So, but yet, because it's associated with Tashiwa, and in Japanese that means me. So are we? That's what's, I think, is handicapped it.
Yeah. No. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's
life.
Probably true.
It's life, right. And I'm not whining. I'm just saying therein lies the challenge. And sure, I could have went out and tried to raise $300,000-400,000, but then, okay, so let's be honest. We do that, I got to hire somebody, because it becomes a big event, and I have a company to run.
Well, and also, this kind of a little bit dovetails to the conversation that we've had about a new professional association.
Right.
That would be the perfect place for the podcast awards to live, potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. So, because it kind of sits in the middle of the industry and doesn't have a specific alliance to any one entity, which is what that's kind of what you want. Yeah.
And I've entertained some offers for the site before, but they wanted to turn them into these awards where they would charge like a $400 entry fee, and it'd become a money machine for somebody.
Well, it's like the Webby Awards, right?
Right. And
It's the same type of thing.
those types of groups have tried to buy it, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to. I would be a bad steward of the podcasting community if I did that. Now, you come with a big enough check, to hell with it. You can have it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that happened once already.
That check wasn't that big, but they promised to follow the formula. You know,
Right,
they
right.
didn't. It wasn't an expense. You know, matter of fact, I still have the check that bounced.
You're gonna frame it on the wall.
You know, and that check wasn't for that much money in the scheme of things. That check bounced. That's the only reason they never got the domain. And I had in the contract, I shall retain the domain in ownership until it's paid in full.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, there's lots of other news we should probably cover because time's going to run out on us. You know, lots of other stuff.
Yes. So this little announcement was made.
Yes.
and I call it little because
there's not a lot behind it yet.
And why? Why does these companies refuse to listen?
Well, they don't have a history of listening to external inputs, Todd. They do what they want to do because they have an institutional, confidence might be the nice way of saying it. Right.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, of course, is the Pandora announcement. We knew it was coming.
Right.
They and what are they going to launch with? 400 shows or 500 or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody really has a hard and fast number on that. But I do know that they're cherry picking shows right now. Let's just be honest about it.
I would encourage everyone to. Here's a little experiment for everyone to do. Everyone that says that they are being included in the Pandora launch, I want you to take some time and just look at the makeup of that show. And this is just no insider baseball thing here, but I've got a prediction. Look at the makeup of the show and tell me what across all of them is about the same.
I don't want to speculate on that one, Todd, too much. But I think I see where you're going, though.
So in my small sampling of content that have said, "Oh, I'm going to be on the launch," it's very risk-adverse content.
Yeah, of course. Right. Well, it's like, I think a good analogy to apply to it is it's like Pandora's dipping their toe in the water, right? To see if the water is warm or cold or too hot.
They're going to find out it's boiling because people are going to have the same visceral, I have to be there, I have to be there, I have to be there.
Well, we're starting to see a little bit of that, though I don't think that we've seen, at least so far, the fever pitch that we had achieved with the roller coaster ride of a said Spotify.
That's right.
And that could be just because of the demographic nature of Pandora, which is a little bit older. It's a little bit of an older user base. It's larger, actually, than Spotify. It's about 76 million U.S. users, where Pandora or Spotify, I think, is in the 50s, 50 million. So, but Spotify is larger than Pandora on a global basis. I believe there are 159 million users on Spotify. So Pandora is US only as well. So those are key points to keep in mind when you think of Pandora. They do have the potential, I believe, to have a significant impact on listening the podcasts in the US. Because podcasting, Todd, I mean, it is starting to skew a little younger, the listener side of podcasting, but still the lion's share of listeners are a little older to podcasts in the U.S.
To hear people talk, they wouldn't believe that, but I'm done fighting that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, Mike says Podfest is March 7th through 9th, 2009. Oh, let me go back and look at Podfest. Oh my God, I'm looking at the wrong dates. Dude, Rob,
March.
I was looking at the 2019 website. I apologize. Oh my God. No, it's
2018. 18 is what you were looking at, right?
Wow, what the hell is the deal here? I searched for Podfest, clicked on it, and I ended up on the 2018 dates. All right, it's March 7th through the 9th. My apologies. If everyone just freaked out, March 7th through... Okay, let me reload the page here, because we're going to have people tripping. March 7th through 9th. That's what I was freaking out. I didn't think it was in February. All right, I'm sorry. I got us off track here, but Mike, thanks for squaring us away here in the chat. March 7th through 9th is Podfest 2019. Okay. Someone's going to be emailing me very angry. All right. We're back on Pandora.
Yeah, and I've got a weed whacker out my window here.
I don't hear him so much.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I'll keep talking so you don't hear him.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
So yes, they're dipping their toe in the water lightly, and I would suspect that the majority of the content's very risk adverse. Nothing too far right, nothing too far left. Some very calm, down the middle type of content. At least
they did ask for political stuff, though. So I have to say,
okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. What that means, but I don't know. We are submitting some shows over there,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just a matter of it's not at a very big scale yet,
Right.
And I think that's even the case with what's going on with Lipson and all the other players in the space.
I think Rob said 423 shows or something like that.
Right. We're just content's going in there very slowly. This is almost a carbon copy of what we went through with Spotify in the early days. This was a couple of years ago. But they did the same type of thing, submitting shows in a spreadsheet. And then they would go through and pick the shows that they wanted to add to the catalog. And that's kind of where we're at with these guys.
And it's painful to do that, because then you've got a whole valley of podcasters saying, how come I wasn't picked? How come?
Right.
And why was I excluded? And therein lies my I guess eternal bitch, is that it's you alienate. I don't know, in the chat room, are you alienated that you can't get on Pandora? Do you care? Tell me in the chat room, do you even care? Or does it?
But I do think that, yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to mention, before we beat up on them too bad.
I'm not beating up on them. I'm just asking the podcasters if they're alienated.
Yeah, no, I get it. I wanted to put it out there too that I think part of what we're going through here, and I don't have any inside information on this at all. I mean, other than just to say that what I'm hearing is that shows are being added very slowly. Even the ones that are submitted over there, they're not going in very fast, which leads me to believe, and this is a little bit of an issue that we saw with Spotify, is that I don't believe that they've architected their system yet to rapidly ingest this type of content yet. And that's part of them dipping their toe in the water, is to bring stuff in, learn about what it takes to parse this stuff and get it into their system. And we may see them go through a development cycle, just like what we saw with Spotify, so they could ramp up to be able to accept more shows, and that may take some time for them to get there. I just wish, I guess in hindsight, that they would have done that somehow quietly. But I think they feel pressure because of what's going on with Spotify.
Of course.
Right.
Where you been?
Right. And that's why I believe we're seeing what we're seeing right now. I'm not sure that their system is really architected to to take in shows at a large scale.
Well, all they have to do is ask for the database spots they want, and we'd be happy to export them. A list with 75,000 shows.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that this podcast genome project that they've put out there, which they haven't given a lot of details on, but I would think that's also part of this issue, is that they want to be able to analyze these shows at a fairly deep level, to understand them, to be able to make those recommendations. Because if you really think about Pandora and what they're known for is creating a linear experience, a personalized linear playback experience. It's quite different, actually, than the user experience of podcasting. So this may not be a perfect fit, with what they're doing, unless they're willing to adapt or maybe make some concessions around their user experience for podcasting. And that's yet to be seen if they're willing to do that.
So I guess we'll see what happens. And, the more the merrier. And I think that we all want more distribution, and more distribution is good. And I think the impatience, what I have impatience in that let's get everyone included, and so that's, from my standpoint of view, is where I come from. And
that's where they're going to wind up. And I guess, if they're listening to us today, that would be the message that I would take away. That's going to be your ultimate destination. Yeah. You're going to have to open it up, just like everybody else has had to. Spotify, iHeartRadio, everybody has opened up their catalog for anyone to get into.
So are they caching, or are they doing pass-through?
I don't know for sure. They haven't really alluded to that yet, and I don't know, and I haven't heard.
Now I hear you. Now I hear it. Now I hear your weed whacker back there. It's okay. This is a podcast. This isn't a professional production.
Well, speak for yourself, Todd. It's a professional production on this end.
Oh, okay. All right. I think we're pretty professional here.
We are.
But we don't have a 20. We're not on the 25th floor, away from the weed whackers of the day, in an isolated studio booth with $50,000 worth of foam pads in it.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
So
anyway,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I'm going to just switch gears just a little bit, and we talked about it on the last show, and it was kind of picked up upon by some of the news folks about some guidelines that I guess, are we done with Pandora, or?
Oh, we're Todd. We're done with Pandora. Just kidding.
We posted just real quick here. I talked about some guidelines on the last show that we did, and for metrics, and this is some good guidelines for any podcaster to follow, and it basically, and I'm not going to bore you all with the details too deep, but it just breaks it down into 4 areas: no preloading, no autoplaying, using ID3V2 tags, and having 1 minute of audio within the first 2 megabits of audio being delivered. So, and then folks that are doing these crazy bit rates like 256 and stuff like that, you may have to step it down to meet that requirement. But I'll have the link in the show notes, and it'll apply to all, everyone that's out there in the podcasting space. It's just good rules to follow.
Yeah, that is true.
But we're waiting. We're waiting on IB Tech Labs. Kind of crickets over there right now. So I don't know if they're waiting for another company's data to come in or what. But we're sitting on pins and needles, ready to rock and roll here soon.
Yeah, I did notice that an email went out from RAD. The
NPR
folks last week. So they're kicking that back up again.
Yeah. What did you take from that? And for those that don't know what RAD is, what does the actual acronym stand for?
Random? No.
Oh man.
I'm not really sure what the acronym is.
Okay, so anyway, it's what it is. It's client side reporting of listener metrics. So it's basically when someone's in a app and they press play, it sends a ping back to the mothership, and then when they hit stop, it sends a ping back to the mothership saying that they stopped. And it's got some other stuff in there too.
It basically exposes the data hole that's existed in the podcasting space is getting playback data on episodes that have been completed in a download.
Yeah. So it's remote audio data is what it is.
Remote audio data. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we have to be careful, Rob. They're asking us not to talk too much about this.
Okay. That's fine.
Except that we did get a email from them and that they are moving forward.
I guess that's positive news. So I'm sure we can say that without getting into a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think that the big issue still is going to be GDPR on this.
Right.
How do we stay lawful and this is going to be probably my number one question when they have their next meeting is how are you complying with GDPR on this? Because I don't know that they 100% can, to be honest with you. I think we're going to have opt-in for apps that apply this. They're going to have some sort of opt-in saying, "Hey, are you willing to be tracked?"
Todd, I had heard from some folks that I know in Europe that some U.S. websites are blocked from being accessed.
Yes.
In Europe because of GDPR.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't realize that it had gone to that degree.
Yeah, because it's if you don't have the I think some people maybe overreacted a little bit, but if you're a big company and you have if you don't have any business in the EU at all, why expose yourself to risk? Now, if you have business in the EU, you have to comply no matter what.
Does that apply to the UK if the UK backs out of the EU?
Well,
with the Brexit?
Probably not. But the UK already has, without the European Union, the UK has some pretty strong privacy laws already.
Already in place.
Yeah, of their own. So,
gotcha.
And it's not something that anyone's had to plan for, but,
right.
I think once a company is GDPR compliant, once you're in, it's something we're doing a monthly talk about this we revisit GDPR stuff every month to make sure that our systems are new things we're adding and making sure that we're remaining compliant. It's built in. We've built it into our fabric, but so our U.S. customers get it by default now. They're basically getting GDPR protections without even being part of the EU.
Yeah, that's true. And we're doing that as well.
So that it was just easier on a enterprise level to deploy it across the way. So we'll see on RAD. Going back to this RAD. We'll see. We'll see what happens with this, but it's the next step. I'm fully supportive if we can figure out how to make it work. Because it really then, even though we've got the IB certification, which I think goes a long ways, it's going to be many years before we get RAD into any appreciable number of devices that will actually be, first of all, they got to get this thing ready. And, but they did take on board some recommendations. I do see some links in this email that lead to some sites that actually are helping with the app implementation.
Right. There's just so much stuff going on in the space, Todd. I mean, being out for a couple of weeks on this show, I just go through the list of my head of so many things that have been going on. Like Apple's kind of gave me the impression that the Site Manager tools are going to probably wind up going away at some point.
We're told that Site Manager, I don't think this is, in very few people have Site Manager to begin with.
No, they don't. No, it's not a widely held entity. I've been working with it though over the years, but I guess
a lot of people got confused, thinking that their personal stats were being affected based on the announcement that Apple made. So we've had to keep telling people, no, your stats weren't affected if you're not a Site Manager user. And they say, what is Site Manager? And if you don't know what Site Manager is, you're not affected.
Right, that's true. Most people that have Site Manager know it very well.
Yeah, but Site Manager's old, clunky. You can really screw up a show easily with Site Manager. In fact, you can delete a show completely.
Right.
So
if you don't realize that if you remove a show from Site Manager, you're removing it from the catalog entirely. So networks that are using Site Manager, if you're going to eventually, either Apple's going to do it or you're going to have to do it, is you're going to have to submit a list of shows to them and have them move the shows out of that area.
Yeah.
Or Apple also said that they're going to be having a new Site Manager type of capability that would be built more into the Podcast Connect area.
Right.
So that's the future of this thing. So a lot of those networks, like if you go to the front page of the podcast area in Apple, you'll see like these icons that link to like Panoply or NPR or whatever, kind of like grouping pages.
Yeah, we're talking in the actual in iTunes itself.
Right. Yeah. They're basically network grouping pages is what they are, that you can kind of customize and add links to and almost create like a
mini network page.
Yeah, it's like a web page, really, inside of the iTunes software. That's going kind of going to go away. So, but they will still have grouping pages, but they probably won't be like website pages, almost like. So, this is my guess.
And it actually, be honest with you, I'm glad it's going away because, example, Tech Podcast Network still has a number of shows in there, and every once in a while one of the guys will ask, because we added everybody in the early days, and and now folks are saying, hey, how do I get out of this? And I have to send an email to Apple, because I can't do it within Site Manager. I can't take a show out of the network and put it back in the normal. It doesn't change their iTunes ID number or anything, but I can't physically move them out and put them back in the normal the normal iTunes list. And
yeah. It's more the open catalog.
Yeah.
Instead of being isolated in this network page, and it was an unfortunate architecture choice that Apple made when they built that thing.
Well, it's been around for how long? 10, 12 years? It's been around a long time.
It has been around
with no updates. You used to could only log into it with Safari. You couldn't even log into it with a different browser.
All right. Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's and I understand why they're having trouble with it. It's part of their old architecture. It's kind of a hangover. But we had one network that we'd already shut down. We'd shut down one specific network, and I told him, I said, we've asked that network to be established a year ago. So while we were on the phone with him, he queued it up and sent it over to support to have the active shows put back into space and the dead shows to be removed.
Sure. Hey, Todd, did you see the numbers that came out of, according to Pacific Content's Dan Meisner, who I actually met up in Toronto when I was up in Toronto. I got to spend some time with Dan. But he was saying that only, 12% of podcasts only have published one episode? So, I don't know. That seems... Does that seem low or high to you, Todd, based on your...
Doesn't surprise me in the least.
Okay. I would have thought maybe it would have been higher.
Well, it would be nice if he would break that out.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Todd, I would think you would have access to that.
I do, but I'm not going to publish that.
Okay. You're not going to publish that. You want somebody else to.
Because I'm not going to be the jerk that does it.
Todd. Okay.
Yeah, I have that info.
I figured that you did.
But here's the thing to think about.
Okay.
Do podcasters typically submit their show to Apple if they only have one episode?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I suppose it's possible.
Yeah, we'll see.
And then 6%, he says here also, haven't made it past 2 episodes.
I'm not surprised.
It says half of all podcasts have 14 or fewer episodes.
Boy, that sounds like some numbers I've shared before.
It probably, maybe that's where he got it from.
Well, no, not. I've said that. That essentially 50% of podcasts won't make it to episode 7.
Right. Well, that's the whole Podfitting thing we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's been an internal goal of mine. It's been a key result with our company to try to move that needle, at least for our hosting customers, so that they get past those critical fail stages. Put a lot of effort into that.
So he said 79,597 podcasts only have one episode.
But remember, he's looking at the entire directory. He didn't quantify that with in the last X number of days. But you're right.
That's true. No. Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't break that up.
Yeah, he could really do some additional digging there and come up with some really juicy stuff. Hey, if he wants access to our API, our API's access is free. And all the people have to do is ask. You guys didn't know that, right? Our Blueberry Directory API is
public now, right?
Public, yeah. You want access to it? Give me a holler.
Okay, I'm sure that they're going to come out of the woodwork, Todd.
They will. They have been.
You thought I was joking, didn't you? But I wasn't.
No, they have been. People have been asking for access.
Yeah, I bet.
So
there's a few apps out there that would like to be independent of Apple, I would think.
And we're a good backup for them.
That's what I mean. Well, or a primary.
Or primary, or you hedge in your bets and you stay with Apple till I don't think Apple's going to turn it off, but.
No, probably not. That would be bad PR. It's kind of like, FeedBurner.
Well, it would kill 90% of the podcasting apps, both the Android and iOS side. So one way to guarantee that the Apple Podcast app gained some new listeners is to kill that, but I don't think they ever will.
Oh, and here's another number that looks like Jacobs Media folks put out. 40% of all commercial and Christian radio listeners say they have never listened to a podcast.
40% of all Christian and
commercial radio listeners.
Okay, that means 60% have.
Yeah.
That's still a pretty good number.
Yeah.
Okay, let's think about
it's
that.
The glass. It's looking at it from a glass half empty.
So let's look at that 40%. Do they have age brackets for that?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
So who's the 40% that aren't listening? What age bracket, or what's the spread there? I would make some speculation, again, pure speculation here, that it would be those that are significantly older. Because let's think about this for a second. You can go to church every Sunday. All right. But do you listen to church radio? I would bear to say I bet that answer is no for most.
Right.
So who do you think is listening to church radio? I would suspect that demographic trend's much older.
Yeah.
I would bet that's 50 plus easy. I might be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's probably accurate. I think that the numbers have shown that the the listeners to commercial and Christian radio would be on the older side.
I would think so.
I tend to agree.
Because, most people are not, well, I got to be careful here, but most people don't want to listen to evangelists. I think that in the 80s, evangelists were big. They were all, I guess I think they probably still are on some TV channels, but I don't know if, and as evangelists, I'm going on a limb here. I'm really probably going to get crucified in email, but I think it trends older.
Yeah. And let's just say it, church attendance has been on the decline for a long time. So,
but at the same time, I think that people are pretty modern. If they go to church, they go to church, and if they might listen to AC/DC on the way out from church. So some of these churches are pretty progressive now.
Yeah.
So just speculation on my part. I don't know. Again, if you listen to church radio, I'm happy. We live in a country where you can do that. And you can choose your programming. But still 60% that have listened, that's pretty awesome.
Todd, I guess Anchor finally clarified their terms of service.
That's, to me, I'm not surprised. But, I try to sit back and look at the 50,000-foot view on that. And, okay, so they had to, I think. I think they had to remove the argument.
Right.
So good on them for doing that. I'm glad to see that they have. And smart move on their part. So did they do it because the investors are giving them pressure? They're not growing? Because if you're on VC, the goal to get the next check is to grow.
Well, I think they are succeeding at the growing part. I'm not sure that they're succeeding at the revenue part. That's
okay. So, so you remove the barrier, you remove the terms of service barrier that people had issues with. Number one. Number two, and I'm just speculating here. You're under pressure to grow revenue, and you are sending emails to podcasters saying, we will pay for advertising in your show for 90 days. And then after that, we'll look at trying to find you a permanent sponsor. So,
and then also get you free podcast hosting too.
Right. So when podcasters hear that, most of them go, what's the catch? So I think inherently they have a problem converting people over that are already established.
Yeah.
It's not
easy to move. It's still a pain for podcasters to move, but yeah.
So, I don't know what you're seeing on your end, Rob. I know what we see on our end. And, I have a little tally sheet that the support team keeps. It puts a checkbox every time we migrate someone away from any service. If I get one from one of yours, or I get one of Libsyn's, or if I get one of Podbean's, we put that in a tracker sheet. And we also track where we're losing shows to. If someone says I'm leaving, going somewhere else, we ask them where they're going. We try, of course, to, try to help them to stay, but, we are all doing this a little bit. And that's the beauty of this space. There's no one that's fully in control. I think it's the beauty of the space. So, I know what I'm seeing coming in from Anchor.
Right.
And I'm personally seeing more ticks in that column than many other columns. So I don't know what you guys see, but.
Well, to kind of read the first paragraph of an article that was written by the CEO of Anchor, he writes, after speaking with countless podcasters in the community, we're setting a new standard for podcasting with a terms of service that is simpler, easier to understand, and better reflects our mission of empowering creators everywhere.
It's not a standard. It's what everyone else was already doing.
Yeah. He's making a proclamation that, that's somehow new, but all the other hosts have been doing the same thing for, 15 years now.
Right.
So, yeah, there's nothing new going on here. So, that's just the honest truth. So,
And they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and there's oh, we should talk. Hey, let's talk about the session you had.
Oh,
Oh,
the session that I had?
Oh man, we missed it. We should have talked about this at the beginning of the show. Oh, if you're still
you're talking about my panel session up in Vancouver?
Yeah, if you're still here, hold on. Oh yeah. Why didn't I remember to talk about that sooner?
Todd. Yeah.
So, Rob.
Yes.
$100 CPM, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you want to share, or can you?
Well, I was on a panel up at the Vancouver Podcast Festival, talking about monetization, how to earn money from your efforts up there. It was kind of the name of the panel session up there, and it had a gentleman on from formerly from Castbox, and now is with a platform called Himalaya is the name of it, and it's funded by a company out of China, right? I think many in the podcast space probably heard this talk about the Chinese podcasting platform that was, or the podcast medium in Japan is like a $7 billion industry or something like that.
You mean in China, yeah.
Oh, in China, yeah, sorry. And it was that, I guess that's the main company that's behind that development in China, has come to the US and has funded a startup called Himalaya. And so the guy that's kind of in charge of that in the US was on my panel with me, and he was putting it out there that that there was an opportunity for podcasters to make $100 CPMs, and that he had plenty of cash to spend in the space. So he had lots of money to burn. What he said.
So was he saying that he's paying out of his venture money $100 CPM to podcasters that are going to be on his platform? Was that what he was implying?
No, he was mainly just making generalized statements around advertising and podcasts.
Oh, you could get $100 CPM.
Right. And
he can have my whole inventory.
Right. And I, of course, I had to be the one to throw cold water on this guy. So, because I was sitting at the other end of the panel, chairs. And so I just raised my hand. I said, I need to interject here and just say that it's probably a little more realistic to say that the podcast CPMs for live reads and host reads are probably in the $20 to $25, maybe $35 range. 100 is probably like at the extreme upper end of the spectrum, unless there's something special going on here.
Rob, you and I have been in the space a long time. How many deals have you done at $100 CPM?
I think the only one that I've ever heard of that even got close to that was some deals that Leo Laporte put together at Twit, and I think the highest number I ever heard was like $60.
I think the highest number I ever heard from Twit was like 75, 76, and I don't know if there was any embellishment there or not. The highest deal that I have ever done was with Adam Carolla on a dating site deal, single episode read. Only one the ad ran in one episode, $45.
Right.
And actually, I'll take that back. I did a neurosurgeon who had 1,000. Okay, this is all right. So this is the opposite token. I did a neurosurgeon deal, where he had a little over 1,100 listeners that were neurosurgeons, $2,100 CPM. Now, okay, so
that's more than $100.
Yes, but it was from a pharmaceutical that wanted to reach those neurosurgeons for a very short period of time. It was a big deal, but it ran 1 month, and this guy got 4 ads from this pharmaceutical to reach those world-renowned neurosurgeon. So yeah, it was a big, but that was, I call that the once in a lifetime ad deal that we ever saw. But it was very unique. It was super highly targeted. And the pharmaceutical paid $2,100. But again, the guy, $2,100 CPM, but he only had 1,100 listeners. So the check was only $2,100
right,
per episode. Okay.
Right.
It wasn't $2 million.
Well, it was a very valuable listener community.
Right. Very valuable listener community. Now that's if you can have that kind of valuable listener audience and have 100,000 listeners, woohoo, retire, but $100 CPM. What kind of, I'm just going to be frank. This guy is not doing any ad deals. He's not. That's completely impossible that he has done any ad deals at $100 CPM. He's outright.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And going around saying that he's got money to throw around at content to a group, like an audience for this panel that's a bunch of indies. You can imagine, I had quite a few of them come up to me afterwards and just say, who the heck was that guy?
So even the audience was kind of like looking at him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I was up there talking about the indie community and how podcasting was really at its core,
right.
Not really an advertising medium, right? And it's just like, and most people in the audience were like, well, yeah, that's kind of been my experience because I'm not making any advertising revenue off of my podcast.
Right.
So it's like, this guy's talking about the biggest shows in the space and somehow applying that to us, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't translate.
Please, if anyone in this audience, and we'll keep your names secret. We will. We'll just email us, either Rob or I. And if you want to use a burner email account, that's okay. But I promise we'll keep your information anonymous. Tell us the biggest CPM deal you've ever done, and then at the same time, tell me what that ended up being dollars wise. Was it $1 million? Was it $500,000? $100,000? What was the number? Because I've done ad deals, $250,000, $300,000, a quarter deals. That at $20 CPM. Right. But for those of you listening, what's the? And of course, people are, man, this is just like asking for the Holy Grail. No one's going to send me an email because they're not going to. They're not going to want to reveal. But again, we'll keep it quiet. You don't have to tell what vendor it was or anything like that, but what's the biggest CPM deal you've ever done that was at scale? Not just for 1,000 listeners, but at scale.
Yeah, right. Well, and also, he was talking about how the future of the medium is free hosting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you added up, everything that he talked about was all about them spending money, right? If you think about it, he must have a boatload of venture capital. That's all I can say. Well, it was like he's going to give away the hosting. He's going to buy ads for $100 CPMs.
Wow.
Obviously, or
he can have my whole inventory. I'll give him and we'll have every podcaster on the planet signed up for $100 CPM.
Yeah, and his venture capital isn't going to last forever.
Great. Well, it's the Chinese, so they dig deeper. They're not the first podcasting company in America that's, it's Chinese based. Podbean is as well. So, they're not the first, but Podbean didn't go around giving $100 CPM.
No, Podbean has built a good business for themselves because they use business principles.
Right. So where was this guy from?
Well, he used to be an executive for Castbox, so he's a younger guy. He's only been in the space for 2 years. So, and if you go, you can hear the guy.
Great.
On the Wolf Den, with the Midroll folks. He did an interview over there.
Really?
his name is Peter, but and if you wanted to go listen to him talk about Castbox, and it's probably understandable why he probably doesn't work there anymore. So anyway, anyway, I hate to bash people like Todd.
It's not bashing. It's come on, but let's be honest. You start saying those types of numbers. If I started Rob, if I started claiming $100 CPM, if I started speaking about $100 CPM,
you need a bigger checkbook.
I would expect to be publicly humiliated. It does nothing it doesn't help the space.
Right.
It sets false expectations.
It does, and it's harmful, but it also, he has to realize that people that are hearing it know it's wrong.
Right.
Because it defies reason. It's what it
does. I've been called out on stuff I've said before, and you know what? If I say something that's not correct, then call me out on it.
Right.
I don't know. I just.
I mean, I would love it if all podcasters made $100 CPMs. Todd.
Me too.
I mean, don't misunderstand what we're saying here.
It's
we just live in reality.
Yeah, $100 CPM, dude. I could afford to live in Hawaii. Actually, I could actually live a little better.
Todd, you've been living there for how many years?
Okay, now Rob, you want to come look at my checkbook? It's it is, and that's one of the reasons I'm leaving. Okay, for the audience, and I know, Rob, you said you don't like bashing people, but let's be frank, and this is a new word I'm liking to use right now. We have to be good stewards of the community.
Right.
Yeah. And if someone has to do it, and I don't mind being one of those stewards that calls people out if it's totally crazy. If he can do $100 CPM and he's found the magic formula, I'll give him I give him millions of downloads a month to sell. He can have it all. He can have it all.
Yeah.
It's
it just doesn't, just pure business principles, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I know that there's this trend for free podcast hosting and that kind of stuff. It just doesn't financially make sense. I mean, unless you can build a business around advertising to pay for it, that's the only way it's going to work. Or donation models or whatever, and there's revenue splits or whatever, which is what Anchor's trying to do. Anchor's trying to build a business around donation models and advertising, maybe, if they can get shows that scale big enough to get advertising. That's the model that they're operating on. We just all have to just recognize it.
Yep.
The models that have sustained the industry have been based on paid hosting.
If I look at, granted, if I look at an individual podcaster and what it costs to host their show, and then, that in itself, I understand where he's coming from. But if I scale that out against 20, 30,000 podcasters,
right, it doesn't scale.
It doesn't scale because when you're doing a bank transfer to pay for your hosting bill, and then the team and the infrastructure behind it to make it work, and that bill comes due,
right.
then to have a team that can continue to move and do more code and do stuff that's going to help the space along further,
right.
That ends up being a number.
Right.
And then if you don't have all of that inventory, and it would have to be all of that inventory monetized.
Right.
And we would have to force monetization. You would have to take advertising. Right. You would have to take what I give you.
Yeah.
And then what do we end up like? Radio, where you're listening to a erectile dysfunction ad in the beginning of your show.
Right.
Or some super vitamin that makes you more viral, or what, you're going to get this crap.
Right. And it will drive people back more to self-hosting again too.
Right.
So it's it's a complex thing, and I hate these companies think that they're being innovative, but the reality of it is that they're actually can be very destructive, because if they convince enough people to do free hosting, then it's going to drive out the businesses that have built this medium, and keep innovating and keep pushing things forward in a solid way that people can rely on. That's the danger of it, and because these guys' business models, everybody just needs to realize it, and this is not unusual in the venture capital world, is that they're charged with grow fast, and sell,
and get revenue. They want a 5 to 10 times return on their investment.
Right, and
2 to 3 years.
They don't care who they destroy along that process.
They don't care. They don't care the devastation they leave in its wake.
Right, and that's the bigger concern that the podcast community should have about these players that are entering the space doing this, is that the space that today, if they succeed, will not be what it is today.
And every company, and maybe the times have changed, but every company that has offered this model up to this point has failed. Every company.
Right, because the model doesn't work. Or
they switch to a revenue model. Now, many of you are going to say, okay, you guys are hypocrites. You guys are you run hosting companies.
Well,
I'm the rent doesn't get paid with free.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. If somebody wants to take that position with us, it's certainly true. We do have a vested interest in this medium of the current models that exist. That's the honest truth. But the honest truth is also the opposite, which is these models are very destructive. Look what happened when, I hate to use this example, but look at YouTube. Look at what YouTube did to the video hosting business. It's a terrific example. Now, granted, that turned out, I guess, good for Google, but it certainly didn't turn out really all that great for probably 30 or 40 video hosting companies that had invested lots of money and time and effort in building their platforms.
And the question then is has YouTube, in a large part, helped 95% of their creators that are on there? No. It's the small percentage that, they're making great money. You see the Casey Neistats of the world. You see some channels are doing very, very well. They've gained a big audience. But
it's a very small industry now. There's not a lot of diversity or a lot of real innovation happening. Like in the podcasting space, we have a lot of innovation going on in this medium. We have a lot of new companies coming in. I love it when a new company launches and supports the models that have worked. And we don't talk badly about these new companies that start off supporting the industry in a way that's going to sustain them, because we see that as the path forward. Now, certainly advertising could be a significant revenue source for these companies down the line, but and that's probably good for everybody in the industry. And who knows, maybe somewhere down the line, Todd, maybe we don't have to be charging for hosting. But that's probably not going to be the case for the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, it will be the only way that it can happen, and happen in a way that doesn't destroy the content.
Right.
Is that the tech has to get a lot better. We have to, we have to be able to place the right ad in the right show at the right time, which digital has done very, very well, and we have to not alienate the audience, and we have to be able to return some value back to the podcaster, and also make sure that the tech that's been invested in to do this can be paid for by a high enough CPM that will sustain and make a business model work. And that's what Anchor's trying to do. But
I certainly commend them for trying to live in the future. And I think that that may be, and maybe by what I'm saying here is I'm confirming that this may be the future. But it seems like that like you say, Todd, the tech needs to get a lot better. The standards around how we do advertising in this space, maybe the premium content needs to get stronger as far as the technology around that. Crowdfunding technology needs to get better. And at some point, maybe we can achieve that. I think it's an aspirational goal, but I also think that companies that are building on that model today are, they've got a countdown clock.
Tick tock.
Yeah.
And it's usually about 3 years.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But the ability to get more money is that they have to put an argument forward that they've got to weigh to revenue. And probably the investment over there is, relatively small, is in the millions of dollars, but
right.
In a pure scheme of things compared to some of these startups out there. But we definitely have, I don't know, I look at advertising today and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make it.
Yeah.
And
it's not scaling. It's not scaling to a point. I know a lot of people are talking about how this industry is going to scale into $1 billion ad market in the next 2 years, and I just don't see a pathway for that.
Until the advertisers until they can say, yes, we'll take Johnny's 1,000 listener show on a deal without me having to argue and battle like it's Armageddon. When they say, oh yeah, good. And I can put ads in Susie's show that has 1,500 listeners, and she can make some money. But it's not there.
Nope.
And there's only so many big shows. So can 5% of the podcast space carry the tens of thousands of other shows and still advance a space purely on advertising rev share? I don't think so.
Not yet, anyway.
No.
But I do think that this is another reason, I guess, for the need of some sort of more standardization. I guess I hate to say that, but it around a professional association of some sort, is so we can start all of us working together to try and come up with practices that will get us there. If that's what we all agree what we want is free hosting, then we've got some work to do.
A lot of work to do.
Right.
But then again, and here's the other side of the coin. I think more than 50% of the podcasters in the podcasting space absolutely do not even want an ad in their show.
Right.
They don't want it in there.
And they need to have that option too. Also, they're going to self-host.
Right.
And that's not necessarily good for the industry either.
Well, we've already seen, and it still happens on a weekly basis, people getting kicked off their hosting platforms.
Right, because they're using too much bandwidth, or...
And it's not bandwidth that's so much the issue anymore. It's resources. That they come back and say that you're using too many server resources.
Right.
By having too many open sessions on your little shared hosting account.
Right.
It's very rarely they get shut down for bandwidth anymore.
It's when you publish the episode, the big spike in the
spike happens.
That happens.
Yeah, because the server only has so many open slots. Let's use it that way. Sessions is actually the word that the technical word. And all of a sudden you launch your show, and these podcatchers are automatically saying, "Oh, new episode!" And within literally seconds, you see the session level count to grab that episode, and all of a sudden you've used all the session resources on that shared hosting account, and everyone else's site goes to a crawl, not because it's can't handle the downloads, it's because the sessions are your server resources are being utilized too much.
And we don't talk that much about how hosts have to pay for what they do. I mean, now it's more than just bandwidth. It's, like you said, Todd, it's server resources.
Yeah.
Which is CPU time, it's processing time. And those are charged on a per cycle basis.
Per minute.
Yeah, right. And that's in addition to the bandwidth charges.
Right. Oh, the bandwidth is only a piece. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wish I could get rid of I wish I only had the bandwidth bill.
Right.
It takes, I'm just looking at, for our ad injection system that we're working on. And, we've had to build technology in there that if we have to rebuild files quickly. We have to be able to, when someone initiates a campaign, we don't want to wait in 20 minutes for that file rebuild. It has to be done fast. So we have to, the server might be sitting there and idle and have to go to 1,000% instantly. And you had to put the technology in to basically immediately auto scale and bring on more servers online for the period of time you need. And none of that is like easy. It's some heavy lift on the server side. So
we call it at Spreaker, we call it spinning up workers.
Right.
Is what we call it. And so, that's to scale up and down based on the needs of the network, right? How much resources do you spin up? How many new servers do you spin up? And there's like separate little server instances that spin up within the cloud network that can do jobs that need to be done, and then those shut down, and then they spin up again when they need to be. So those are all charged for, but Todd, we don't really talk about that stuff that much around how all of us have tremendous motivation to produce efficiencies in our networks. And that actually is really interesting when you think about the future of the medium. Is that all of us, your network, our network, Libsyn's network, we have there's a lot of motivation for us to drive increased code efficiencies into our networks.
Because I think
to save money,
just to keep the machine running. I don't even want to. I think I know the number because we number our servers sequentially. I think I know what the number is. Of course, some have been retired, but it's not a small number of boxes. And not only that, database servers and all this stuff that has to just sit there and run it. Really, when you have 600,000 podcasts listed in a directory, that doesn't run on a standard SQL database. That just doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
So, but anyway,
too many concurrent sessions for one server to handle, so it has to scale across
many boxes, and then not just a few, a lot,
hundreds.
Yeah. Well, I'm not at that level. We don't have to have 100 boxes, but it's probably the number's closer to 50, at least on our side.
Okay.
So, but people think 50 servers. You got 50 servers running. Yeah. Yeah, 50. So, and that number can change depending on the time of day too. So,
is there any big stuff that we've forgotten about, Todd?
If we have, I didn't even look at the podnews.net site. Pocket Cast released a redesigned app. That's out.
That app is owned by, was it the National Public Media, right?
Yeah. Right. So I wonder be curious to look and see if they said they weren't going to put any RAD in there, but I'd be curious to see if they have. What else has been going on? 3/4 of the top podcasts have ads in them. Oh, what did you think about the Saturday Night Live skit?
Oh, I thought that it was. I had a little mixed feelings about it. I thought that they were making fun of the content, but I thought that it probably was inspired based on the announcement of iHeartRadio, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I looked at and they did. I was cool. I was laughing until they introduced Mark Maron as the Podfather podcasting. I shouted at my screen, "No, he's not."
Yeah.
And definite,
Well, Todd,
did
you know
cute.
that podcasting started in 2009?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a common thread over the next year, is that podcasting started in about the same time frame when the comedians got involved.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. They can have their 10th anniversary next year.
Right.
The rest of us
been around for 10 years, right?
Yeah, the rest of us know the true story, and we're going to celebrate our 15th anniversary in podcasting. Matter of fact, then there should be something big done because of that. Yeah, there should be some. It's a big milestone for the space.
Should that be something that's done by the International Podcast Day folks, or?
Yeah, maybe Steve and Dave. Maybe you guys ought to think about that. It's a 15. 20 is bigger, but 15 is cool too.
Because I think September is a pretty good date range for doing that. Because
I celebrate my 15th anniversary of doing a podcast in early October of 19.
Yeah.
So
mine is September 15th for me.
Think of Rob, dude. We're old, man. 15 years, 14 years going on, 15 years in this space.
I don't know.
Wow.
Pretty scary.
It's like, really? We've really been at it this long?
I know.
And we're talking about some of the same crap that we've been talking about. We've been talking about some of the same stuff for 10 years.
I know. It doesn't speak well of us, does it?
Well, it just shows you that the space, it's been this long... It's been
very slow.
Long, slow grind.
And a lot of people are starting to get frustrated with that, I've noticed here over the last few weeks. It's not growing fast enough, and I'm hearing people talk about, we got to get rid of that podcast name.
Okay. This is like the 18th iteration of that. So, oh my, Rob, please.
I know. I had to say it. Sorry, Todd. What can you say, right? Okay.
It's just a part of the roller coaster. Yeah, we're good. Oh, got to get rid of the podcasting. No, we're good. No,
it's not growing fast enough, Todd. If we change the name, it'll grow faster. Did you know that?
Yeah.
If we just change it to radio, Todd, that'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I had a reporter call me, and she said to me, she says, "I need the stats for this show." And I'm like, I said, "I wish I could help you. I have to reach out to the specific show and ask for their stats." "You mean you can't just give that to me over the phone?" I'm like, "No, I can't." I said, "But if the podcaster sends me an email and gives me written permission to release the data to you, I'd be happy to do that." But she goes, "Well, what kind of a space is this?" I'm like, I'm just like, do you release your listener numbers or your readership numbers? And I think actually newspapers do, but
right.
So yeah, she was irritated. And matter of fact, I said, "Have you checked to see if that show actually works with us?" Because I'm not 100% sure that show actually works with us. They might work with, and I named the company, and I said they would have his stats probably, and that got her even more mad. "What do you mean? There's not a central location for stats?"
But Todd, I think in this next year, I think we're all going to be really challenged to come up with ways that we can grow this medium a little faster. But I don't have any magic bullets for that.
Sustain superior content.
Right. So, but you're trying to scale this across all levels of content creators. I mean, it's almost like I get the feeling like sometimes that people get frustrated because there's independent creators here, right?
Right.
It's almost like they think that the solution to this problem is to
get rid of us.
Yeah, exactly. Get rid of the independent creators because all they're creating is crap content and it's not worth anything. And
there'll be more listeners to come over and listen to our stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the under kind of tone that I'm hearing in the space more and more, because people want to grow faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a magic solution for that. I don't think anybody does.
Well,
there's people out there that think they do. But
when you figure that out, Rob, you know what's going to happen then? you
What's that?
will be the next winner of the venture capital money, because if you figure that out, people will line up and give you cash.
I guess $100 CPMs might be the solution there.
Well,
There you go.
yep.
That'll make the space grow faster. That'll attract
It would.
new listeners.
It would. Well, it would attract new podcasters.
Right. That's right. It would.
If that was really the case. But
And that may be the motivation. But I kind of put it clearly in the lap. I mean, at this point, Todd, I put it clearly in the lap of Google and Apple. They're responsible for growing audience.
well, podcasters have still. I saw a thread the other day. The guy is complaining he was 85% Apple and 15% other. And then I looked at his show. I didn't even comment, but the guy had looked on his website. He was promoting Apple and Stitcher. That was it. And I'm just like, okay, don't complain to me if you're complaining about your audience makeup. How come you're not helping your listeners? So we have we have a lot. We have to take ownership of our own growth as well. So hey,
That's true.
We're long. We're really long.
We are. I know. It's been gone for 2 weeks.
So are we going to do a show after Thanksgiving? I think so. Yeah.
When we say after Thanksgiving,
Next Saturday, we're going to do
next Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, we can try.
Yeah, I think so. I fly out Saturday night, but and that probably will affect our follow-on show the following week. But yeah, let's plan for next Saturday. I'm not doing anything for Black Friday except for being a keyboard warrior and shopping from home.
Okay.
And eating leftover turkey. and copious amounts of alcohol too. So
I probably won't have too much turkey myself.
No,
that's okay.
Yeah, I know you don't. What do you actually eat for Thanksgiving, being a vegetarian?
Sometimes some faux turkey.
So you get some
tofurkey.
A tofurkey. Are you kidding me? You eat tofu? Please tell me that's not what you eat. Is that really what you eat?
There may be a little bit of that there.
How's that taste? I'm serious. I've never had it. I'm just curious.
I can't describe it, Todd. It tastes what it tastes like.
So do you actually roast it, or is it you have to? How do you? I'm serious. I don't know. Do you microwave it? How do you warm this stuff up?
You cook it in the oven.
Do you?
It comes in like a boneless loaf.
Oh. My daughter done the vegetarian thing before. I'm going to have to ask her to go out and get me one. How big is it? Is it like in a meatloaf size thing?
Right.
Oh.
Totally. Yeah. You don't have to stuff it though.
Of course not. So maybe I get my daughter to go to, where do you get it? To Whole Foods or someplace like that?
Probably.
All
That'd be a good place.
I'll send her over there. We'll get one. Well, I'll try it now. I'll tell you my results of trying the tofurkey.
Todd, you're becoming adventurous.
I'm always open. Matter of fact, when she was she went hardcore for about a year, and we accommodated her, and I ate her food, and I'm not complaining. It was okay.
Right.
So, but I'll be honest with you. Tonight, I'm going to be having a big, juicy steak.
So what cut of steak is that going to be, Todd? Is it going to be a top sirloin?
I don't know. We'll see what they have. Almost everyone likes fillets, but I'm kind of a porterhouse type of guy too. So we'll see what they've got. Okay. And we're going to it's my wife and I's anniversary tomorrow, so we're going to go to she has made reservations someplace, and I asked my buddy, you know about this place? And he laughed at me. He said, oh, yeah. He said, yeah, get your checkbook ready. I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess I'm paying for a good dinner. Probably a little wine and, some.
All right.
So we'll see. I'll give you the report, but I'll make sure we get some tofurkey here, and we'll try it.
Okay. Good luck with that, Todd.
Everyone else out there that's listening to the show, hey, for those of you in the United States, I know you got a big travel week coming up. Load up on some podcast. This one obviously is the primary one we want you to listen to, but at the same time, introduce your family members to podcasts. This is a good weekend and you don't have to promote just yours. If you know that you've got an aunt or an uncle that's a big sports guy, recommend a sports show for him. Go prepared to the feast with a list of shows, and don't be afraid to take their mobile device and subscribe them to yours and other podcasts out there to get them on the podcast bandwagon. So, many of you are going to be in houses with 30, 40 people in it, or even maybe smaller numbers, but some of you are going to have an opportunity here to multiply the people that are listening to podcasts in general. So this is the one time a year where you have a captive audience to do that. So have your pitch ready.
Yeah. And Todd, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get Apple Watches for Christmas here this year. So we may see a bump in usage of watches to listen to podcasts this next year.
And we've got some questions out to Apple on the Apple Watch. We're seeing some curiosities there that we have to explain, and we're waiting for them to.
Yeah, it's a whole new kind of listening
situation. There's some weirdo stuff going on, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. But anyway, all
right,
Todd at blueberry.com.
Rob at voxnest.com. If you want to send me an email, or you can send it to rob@robgreenlee.com too.
And of course, Rob's on Twitter at Rob Greenlee. I'm on Twitter at Geek News. It's been our pleasure to bring you the show. Have a great holiday. Be safe and enjoy your time with family. No fist fights. And talk about podcasts instead of politics. It'll be a much more gentle Thanksgiving holiday. And
there's nothing to talk about politics anyway, right, Todd?
It's a forbidden topic at my family's Thanksgiving dinners. We've actually set an internal rule, no, because people end up getting pissed off. So
right. Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So no politics. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Everyone, take care. We'll see you.
Okay. See ya. Bye.
Aloha.